Welcome back to our channel, where the unexplained becomes reality. Tonight, we delve into the eerie and unsettling experiences that some of our viewers have bravely shared. These are not just stories, they are real encounters with the unknown, moments when the veil between our world and the supernatural seems almost too thin. So, sit back, dim the lights, and prepare yourself for 3 chilling tales that will make you question what really happens when the night falls. Let's begin. The Midnight Visitor. I've never been one to be easily startled. I grew up in a small town in the Texas backwoods, where the nights were pitch black and the silence was broken only by the occasional sound of a coyote or the wind blowing through the trees. But that night, something different happened. Something I still can't explain. It was one of those hot summer nights when the heat is stifling, even after the sun goes down. I had spent the entire day working on the farm, tending to the cattle, mending fences, and preparing for the upcoming harvest. Exhausted, I went to bed right after dinner, expecting to fall asleep in a matter of minutes. And that's what happened. I was sound asleep when suddenly I woke up to a strange sensation. It wasn't the sound of anything in particular, but a feeling, as if someone was watching me. I slowly opened my eyes, trying to adjust to the darkness. The clock on the nightstand read 3:15 in the morning. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Who hasn't woken up in the middle of the night and felt disoriented, right? But this feeling was different. It was intense, almost palpable. It was as if the very air around me was charged with electricity. That's when I heard the sound. A light scratching on my bedroom door. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to make my heart race. I sat up in bed, trying to listen better. There was another scratching, followed by a light tap on the doorknob. Someone or something was trying to get in. I stood up slowly, feeling the cold floor beneath my bare feet. The silence was deafening. I walked to the door, each step making the wooden floor creak. With my hand shaking, I turned the doorknob and slowly opened the door. The hallway was empty. I looked around, hoping to see some sign of movement, but there was nothing. Just darkness and silence. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Maybe it was just a nightmare, I thought. Maybe I had imagined it all. I closed the door and went back to bed, still feeling that strange energy in the air. I tried to convince myself that everything was fine, that there was nothing to worry about. But as I lay down, I heard it again. This time, the sound came from the window next to the bed. A soft scratching, followed by a faint tapping. I slowly turned around, facing the window. The curtains were closed, but I could see a shadow outside. A dark, indistinct figure that seemed to be looking right at me. My heart almost stopped. I stood still, not knowing what to do. The figure remained there for a few seconds, then slowly moved away, disappearing into the darkness. That night, I couldn't go back to sleep. I stayed awake until dawn, trying to figure out what had happened. The next day, I looked around the house for signs of someone or something, but I found nothing. Since then, that feeling has never left me. No matter how many nights have passed, I always wake up at exactly 3:15 in the morning, with the same feeling that something is watching me. And I always hear the scratching on the door, followed by the touch of the doorknob. To this day, I don't know what visited me that night. But one thing is certain, I have never been the same again. Whispers in the dark. As a child, I was always curious. I grew up in an old house in the suburbs of a small town in Georgia, surrounded by tall, shadowy trees. My mother always said the house had a history, but she never went into detail. All I knew was that sometimes she would stare off into space, as if lost in thought, and I never asked why. The first time I heard the voices, I was about 10 years old. It was an ordinary night, nothing special. My parents had already gone to bed, and I was in my room, trying to read a book with the help of a flashlight. The house was silent, except for the occasional sound of the wind blowing in the trees outside. I was so absorbed in reading that I almost didn't notice the sound at first. It was a whisper, low and indistinct, as if someone were speaking right next to me, but with their mouth covered. I stopped reading and looked around, trying to locate the source. Everything was quiet, but the sound continued, growing clearer and clearer. It was as if someone was calling my name. Jack. The whisper was soft, but clearly audible. The sound made my skin crawl, and a chill ran down my spine. I sat up in bed, trying to figure out where it was coming from. It seemed to be coming from the hallway, just beyond my bedroom door. I stood up, the flashlight shaking in my hand, and slowly opened the door. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint moonlight that came through the window at the end of the hall. I walked slowly, each step making the floor creak. Jack, the voice called again, this time more insistent. I followed the sound to the end of the hallway, where there was a small door that led to the attic. It was an area of the house we rarely went to, only to store old things. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound seemed to be coming from there. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to run back to my room and hide under the covers, but curiosity got the better of me. I pushed open the attic door and climbed the narrow stairs, feeling the air grow colder with each step. In the attic, the sound was clearer. It seemed like there were several voices now, all whispering my name. Jack. Jack. I shone my flashlight into the space, but there was nothing there but old boxes and dust-covered furniture. But the voices continued, echoing around me, as if they were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then I saw something. In the corner of the attic, a small, dim light began to glow, like a lit candle. I walked over to it, feeling my heart beat faster. The light was coming from an old wooden box, the likes of which I had never seen before. I knelt down and opened the box. Inside was an old doll, dressed in a lace dress, and an old photograph. The photo showed a girl, maybe my age, with a sad smile. On the back of the photo was written a name, Lillian. The voices grew louder, desperate now, almost pleading. Jack. Jack. Help me. I dropped the flashlight and ran back to my room, the sound of the voices haunting me. That night, I had nightmares about the girl in the photo, her sad smile turning into a scream of pain. The next day, I told my mother everything. She turned pale, but didn't say anything. She just hugged me and told me not to go back to the attic. I never heard the voices again after that night, but the attic always gave me the creeps. Years later, I found out that Lillian was the daughter of the previous owners of the house. She had died tragically in an accident, and ever since, her presence seemed to haunt the place. I never went back to the attic again. But to this day, I swear that if I were there, I could still hear those voices whispering my name. The unseen in the sky. My ranch is in the heart of Montana, surrounded by acres of empty land and rolling hills that stretch as far as the eye can see. It was the perfect place to escape the hustle and bustle of the city and live a quiet life, tending cattle and growing my own crops. Or so I thought. It all started on a moonless night a few weeks ago. The sky was clear, not a cloud in sight, and the stars shone with an almost surreal intensity. I was outside, finishing feeding the horses, when something strange happened. At first, it was just a sensation. As if the air around me was vibrating, charged with electricity. The horses, who were normally calm at night, began to stir, snorting and stamping their hooves. I instinctively looked up, trying to figure out what was happening. That's when I saw it. A light in the sky, unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't a plane, or a helicopter. It was a white, pulsating light that moved erratically, as if it were searching for something. At first, I thought it might be a drone, but the way it moved, fast and silent, made me doubt that. I stood there, paralyzed, watching as the light hovered over my farm. It moved from side to side, as if it were scanning the ground. The horses were completely terrified now, running back and forth in the paddock. I tried to calm them, but nothing seemed to work. The light began to descend, getting closer to the ground. I could see that there was something else there, a kind of shadow that moved along with the light, but I couldn't make out what it was. It was as if the air was distorted around the thing, creating a kind of mirage. Suddenly, a high-pitched sound cut through the silence of the night. It was a sound I had never heard before, a mix of buzzing and static that made my ears hurt. The light intensified, shining so brightly that I had to cover my eyes. When I finally managed to open my eyes again, the light had disappeared. The sky was as dark as before, and the horses, although still agitated, were beginning to calm down. I looked around, searching for some sign of what had happened, but there was nothing. Just the silence of the night and the feeling that something very strange had just happened. For the next few days, I tried to make sense of what I had seen. I spoke to a few neighbors, but no one had noticed anything unusual. I even searched online, looking for UFO sightings or anything that could explain what I had seen, but I found nothing that made sense. I tried to forget about it, to move on with my life, but the feeling that something was wrong never left me. Every night, I would go outside to watch the sky, hoping to see that light again, but it never came back. Until, a week later, I found something strange on my farm. It was a mark in the ground, a perfect circle of scorched earth, where nothing seemed to grow. I didn't know how it had gotten there, but the worst thing was the feeling that it was connected to what I had seen that night. Since then, things have never been the same. I started noticing other strange things, like noises in the middle of the night and the constant feeling that I was being watched. Even the animals seemed nervous, always looking up at the sky as if they were waiting for something to appear. I don't know what that light was, or what was flying over my farm that night. But one thing I do know, something has changed since then. Something that I can't explain, but that haunts me to this day. If you made it this far, you've heard some of the most spine-tingling experiences that our world has to offer. But remember, these stories are not just fiction, they are the real-life accounts of ordinary people like you and me, who have encountered the extraordinary. If you have your own tale of the unknown, don't hesitate to share it with us. Who knows? Your story could be the next to send shivers down our spines. Until next time, stay safe, and keep your eyes open, because you never know what might be lurking in the shadows.